Thank you, Dawn. I appreciate it. I promise I'm the last speaker, and I'll be very short. I know you guys want to get home. And unlike Bob Coughlin, who's more like a hurricane, I'm more like a soft spring rain. I'm definitely I don't have the. I am enthusiastic about the industry. I just don't have the gumption that he has. I'm with BIO, the Biotechnology Innovation Organization. We are the national trade association that represents the biotech industry, and we represent every facet of biotechnology, from healthcare and biopharmaceuticals to agriculture applications to biotechnology, as well as industrial applications to biotechnology. So we work in all three of those spaces. We work very closely with BioConnecticut, as well as other affiliates of ours around the country, including MassBio. We look to BioConnecticut as our voice in Connecticut, especially on the economic development issues that were spoken about a lot today. I do want to give you a bit of a snapshot, though, of the member company profile of BIO. I would say about 90% of our members are biopharmaceutical companies. We range in membership from the large companies like Pfizer and Merck and Genentech and Amgen to the smaller startup companies that are really populating the biotech industry, especially in Connecticut. And these are companies that maybe have one product or no product on the market. These companies make up the vast majority of our membership companies, and I would say that we've done an analysis of them to figure out where profitability is and how successful these companies are. They are very successful, and they're very successful in bringing new technologies into the marketplace, into patients. And this shocks policymakers every time we make this statement, but 90% of those companies are not yet profitable. We have member companies that have very successful products on the market, and they've been around. They're the first generation of biotech companies out there. They've been around for many years, and they are just now, after having a product on the market for 4 or 5 years, just starting to turn a profit. So that gives you an indication of how challenging and labor-intensive and resource-intensive this industry is. This industry is also, the small biotech companies are also responsible for 70% of the clinical trial work right now being done in the U.S. The bulk of that is in oncology, but this is also a segment of companies that's working in the rare and orphan disease space, because they have the ability to invest in a patient population and in a drug where they know it's not going to be a blockbuster, but it will help them get a medicine out to a very small patient population that's really in need. And those diseases are so challenging, and those conditions are so challenging, that biotechnology is really one of the only sciences that can actually start to tackle some of those disease states. So we're very proud to speak for that organization, for those companies and those companies that make up a lot of the bio industry in Connecticut. The other point I want to make, and I don't know if there's any legislators in the room, but this is a very intense continuum, and it has multiple players. It's large companies, it's small companies, it's government, it's academia, and when one of those wheels in the spoke are broken or are damaged, then the system will fall apart. So when we hear policymakers talk about being very critical towards the pharma industry for their pricing and for other issues, we get nervous about that, because we need those big companies to help our small companies thrive. We also get very nervous when we hear policymakers talking about reducing the funding for CDC or NIH. We rely on those government entities to help us with the basic research that goes into developing these medications. So, and I was very pleased to hear this last panel talk about the collaboration between the universities and the industry. That is paramount in any successful biotech community. That is why Massachusetts and Cambridge is so successful. That's why the Bay Area and San Francisco is so successful, and that's why San Diego is so successful, and that's why, excuse me, the industry here in Connecticut is very successful as well. So I was very pleased to hear that, but it's very important to understand this is all very interconnected, and if you hurt one area of it, the rest of it can come tumbling down. I had some notes in here on some of the economic development stuff, but it sounds like you guys are economic development out. But I had some friends of mine pass out a report. We do it every 2 years, where we look at what states are doing in economic development. We call it our best practices report, and it lists what all the industry clusters around the country are doing in terms to strengthen and grow their industry. We're a national trade association, so we hear from just about every state how they want to build a biotech cluster in their states. And quite frankly, there are some states that will probably never have a biotech cluster, or at least not a strong one, just because they don't have the right mix. I think, and to Bob Coughlin's point this morning, I think Connecticut and New England are uniquely positioned to compete with the Californias of the world, because you already have the infrastructure in place. You have the universities, you have the hospitals, you have the large pharma, you have the employees that are being trained in large pharma that can go out and start some of these smaller companies. So you do have everything in place in Connecticut. I would not look at this, though, as just a Connecticut biotech cluster. I would start to look at this more as a regional biotech cluster, because the more Cambridge is not going to go away. They're going to be the dominant player. The companies are there, and I don't think they're going to move. But if you can figure out ways to look at this from a regional perspective and work together, you can start to compete with folks on the West Coast for sure. And finally, I just wanted to make a plug, and I'll talk a little bit about some of the federal stuff that we're working on, but I want to make a plug, and I think we talked about it earlier. We have a convention every year, and it attracts roughly 16,000 people, everyone connected in every aspect of biotechnology. And this year it will be in Boston, and it will be June 4th through the 7th at the Boston Convention Center. This is the premier global conference for biotechnology. We have representatives from every state. We have representatives from 47 countries. Everybody's vying to be the next biotech cluster in the world when they come to this meeting, but it's an opportunity to meet all the movers and shakers of our industry. It's predominantly a business development opportunity, but states have their pavilions, their economic development people have their pavilions, some of our state affiliates have their pavilions, and it's a way for people to connect and be seen and be part of this really dynamic industry. So I really encourage every one of you to come to Boston in June and participate in our biotech, it's called Bio 2018. And then following that year, we'll be in Philadelphia in 2019, so that's just another hop, skip, and a jump down the road. So we're going to stay on the East Coast for the next 2 years, and we hope to have some of the folks from Connecticut be very active in that. On the federal front, I actually do state legislative work, but I do have some colleagues of mine that are that are working in Congress, and we are very actively working right now with members of Congress on some of the pricing issues that you're hearing about in terms of. There's efforts right now underway to close the donut hole, which was created in the Medicare Part D program in Congress, and they're looking at ways how industry can help pay for that, for closing that donut hole. So we are working with members of Congress to figure out ways where we can provide some efficiencies to the system to help in that regard. We are always defending the industry in Washington. We do have some people that are critical of the industry, and we try to explain to them the value of the products that we bring to patients and the fact that we can actually, this is a full continuum in healthcare, and that some of the products that we have put forward actually could lower long-term healthcare costs, keeping people out of the hospital, keeping people out of the doctor's offices, and being treated with some of the products that we have out there. So we also get involved on the regulatory side in terms of how biologics are approved through the FDA and what the FDA process is in the Prescription Drug User Fee Act, or known as PDUFA. That gets reauthorized, I think, every 8 years or so, where we've got to go before Congress and convince Congress that we are, not convince Congress, we go to Congress and work with them to explain to them how our drugs are approved by the FDA and see if we can get a more efficient approval process through the FDA. So that's what we work on a federal level. We work with Connecticut Bio because we look at them as the voice of the state. So when we have to deal with Senator Blumenthal or Rosa DeLauro, we reach out to Bio Connecticut to see if they can help us advocate with those members on our behalf, and it's a very good partnership. So with that, I think this is a great event today. I was very surprised at the people that showed up and the people that stayed, and I really appreciate being part of it. So thank you, Don.